Jack Spade back here with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And today, part 2 of the Chaps build. If you go back and take a look at part 1, we cut out the pieces for the front of the Chaps. Again, I explained in that video, I've never done this before. It's something I've always wanted to try to do. So it's a new project for me. So moving into part 2, what we're going to do is we're going to cut some fringe for down the sides, and then we're going to place some hair-on cowhide on the front. So that's what we're going to try to get accomplished today. So come on in and let's get started. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is I'm going to take the same leather that I cut my main leg part of the Chaps out with. I'm going to take that same leather and use it as my fringe, but I'm going to flip it over onto the unfinished side so it gives it more of a suede feel for my fringe. So I mark these at a 1/2 inch from the edge. So I'm going to cut up to, let me mark a line here. I've got 1/2 inch marks down through here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut up to that 1/2 inch line. And that'll give me a 1/2 inch to connect that fringe to my legs of my Chaps. So I'm sure a lot of these, you could stitch them. I am going to have thought a lot about this since the last video. And what I'm going to do is I am going to attempt to use rivets instead of doing all that stitching, which would take a long time, a lot of effort, time to do that stitching, especially by hand if you don't have a machine. So I'm going to attempt to use rivets and then hide those rivets using some decorative silver spots. And I'll get into that here in just a little bit. So I'm going to move my leg portions out of the way. And I'm not going to mark all these since I'm cutting them by hand. I am just going to eyeball as I cut down through here with my ruler, and I'm just going to eyeball about 1/8 of an inch at a time. So I've put a brand new blade in my knife. I've got a nice stainless steel straight edge, and I'm going to start at this end. I don't think it matters. Maybe if you're right-handed or left-handed, it might make a difference. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start cutting approximately 1/8 of an inch from that 1/2 inch line that I drew all the way out to the edge. And that's going to make my fringe all the way down. Now, I was talking about stitching being time consuming. This is going to take some time also. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish this. Let me show you where I'm at here as I start. I get a few of them cut. I'll give you an idea what they look like. And there's several cuts, and there's the start of my fringe. And actually that's what it would look like, since it's going to be on the unfinished side, or the suede feel side. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of these off camera, and then I'll come back as soon as I've got that done. Alright, so I'm back, and that took to do both of them, and I cut all those by hand. It took approximately 20 minutes to do that, but you can see they turned out really nice. I got some real nice fringe. I got two pieces, one for each leg. So I'll set those aside for now, and I'm going to move on to the hair-on cowhide, and I'll show you what I come up with that. I cut two smaller pieces out of the hide, and they're both a little different because I didn't want them to be matching or the same. So what I did was I took one of the leg pieces, and I laid out a piece upside down, and what I did was I put it on top like so. Looks like I've got the wrong one because the angles are different for the crotch area. So what I did was I laid that on top of that piece of hide, and I marked it. I just took a pen and marked where it was 7 inches, I believe, down, and then I put a little mark there, made a mark across at 7 inches, so I knew, and I outlined these three sides so I knew exactly where that was going to be when I flipped this up. Then what I did was I took a French curve, and it, you know, there's a million of them, and I just picked one out randomly that I thought looked good. Then I put it on here and drew these scallops down to a point halfway. So this was 8 inches at the bottom all the way across. I marked it at 4, and that's where I made my center point. So you can see how I drew that scallop on there, and it comes down to a point. So I've got a scallop on each end, and then I've got a point in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that out. I've got a good sharp blade. Take my straight edge, and I'm going to cut that piece from the back side where I have my marks. And sometimes, if you've ever worked with this hair-on cowhide, it can make a mess when you cut through it. All the hair that you cut through, it's like giving somebody a haircut and it's all over your floor. Now it's on my workspace, so I try to keep that cleaned up the best I can as I go through. Now I'll cut this side. Again, this hair on cowhide's pretty thick. So I'll clean that hair up. I get a little tiny pile of hair every time I do that. I'll turn it around, do this edge, And this edge, I'm not going to be able to use a straight edge because it curves because of the crotch area. So I'm going to have to do it by hand. So I'll slowly just follow that line that I drew on there. And I'm just going to cut that off and then do the scallops last. So there's what I have so far. So now I can go ahead and start cutting my scallops from my French curve. And if I go, I've got a pretty sharp blade in there, so if I go slow enough, I might be able to make it all the way through, but I don't want to make too big of cuts because I don't want to make a mistake and mess up my cowhide. And for leather that thick, it does take a lot of pressure to get through it in one cut. And it looks like I've got just a little here at that scallop point. There we go. So that takes care of that one. Now I can come back the other direction, do the other side. Again, I'm cutting very slowly, trying to keep my tip up as much as possible so I don't have a lot of the flat part of the blade in the leather. I just have the tip up there. Another thing you got to be careful about is never put your hand in front of that blade because you're pressing so hard. If you ever slipped, you'd be missing either a finger, a thumb, or a lot of skin. So there's my waist. Let's flip this over. Let's take a look and see what it looks like. Looks like I can clean this up a little bit. Clean this edge up. And then this is going to actually, once I flip that over, it should fit on this side, and it does perfectly. So that's what I end up with as far as my hair on cowhide. That's going to look really good. And then the fringe would be going down this side. So let me grab that. Kind of give you an idea what that's going to look like once I get all that put together. The fringe will be going down that way. And you can see it's really coming together now. So let's do this. Let's transfer this onto this other piece of cowhide for the other side. So it should just mirror that if I flip that over, which it does. So on that side, that would be the finished side. So what I want to do is put it on here like this, and that should give me my finished side when I flip it over to the hair. So instead of going through all that measurement and everything again, I'm going to double check, make sure this hair is where I want it on the other side. And then I'm going to take my pen and transfer that and use that side as a pattern to cut the second side. That way I don't have to measure anything. It'll be the exact same size and shape. I don't have to use a French curve again. I could just come down and trace around those edges. And this leather, this hair on cowhide is thick enough, it makes a great pattern. So I traced that out. You can see my transfer marks. I can go ahead and go straight to the straight edge like I did on the other one and cut the straight line. Again, it just makes it a little quicker if I do it that way. Now I'm back to giving this piece a haircut, cutting that hair off, and I'll vacuum all this up once I'm done, get that mess cleaned up. Now I can go to this side, which has a straight edge or a straight line. Cut it off. Another haircut on the underside. Now this side is just like the second side that we did on the first piece. It's got a curve in it because of the crotch. So we're going to cut it freehand and slowly follow that line that we transferred to this other piece. Then I can go ahead and cut that off, get it out of my way, get that hair out of the way. I've got a fly driving me crazy today. So let's go ahead and let's start at this point. Follow that traced line. And again, I'm going very slow. I don't want to ruin a piece of my expensive cowhide leather with the hair on. If you guys bought any of that, you know how expensive it can be. So I try to be very, very careful with it. and I also try to save as much of it as I possibly can on scraps and things so I can use it on other projects. Again, try to be very careful not to put your thumb or your fingers in front of that blade. Always try to keep it behind the blade. And there's that piece. Again, scoop up the hair. And I made a nice mess. So let's take a look, see what we've got as far as our hair on pieces. That one goes to that chap. And this one goes to this chap. Wonderful. So I've got both of my hair on pieces cut. They're sculpted the way I want them. And then I've got my fringe cut. So the next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and attach these. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put some contact cement on both of these. Put them together. I'm going to do the same thing down the edge for the fringe and attach that. Then we'll get into the hardware in the next video of how we're going to permanently attach those together. So what I'm going to do is between now and next week's video is go ahead and do that contact cement, get these attached. I'll let those sit for a little bit. Then for next week's video, when you come back, that'll be attached. The fringe will be affixed or attached, but not permanently yet. Then we'll go ahead and we'll do the riveting, and we'll do the spots, and we're going to also do some conchos. So make sure you come back and check out the next video of this. Alright, so there's the next steps done in the Chaps project, and that should give you a good idea of where we're going with this and what those are going to look like. We've got some contrast now instead of just that finished side of that leather that we started with. We've got some fringe here that's going to turn out, it looks like it's going to turn out great. We've got some hair on cowhide that's got some sculpting in it. So as you can see, it's going to look pretty sharp. Of course, that one would go on this side. The fringe would be on the outside. So I'll go ahead and do some of the gluing and that off camera. Next week, come back, check out the next video. We'll be putting this together with some rivets, spots, conchos, and it'll really start coming together. So I appreciate you coming along, appreciate you watching. Please, like I always say, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.